I was standing in the hallway of the Aria Tower's 70th floor when I got the call that would shatter everything I thought I knew about family. Ben's voice was shaking something I'd never heard from my unflappable lawyer friend in all the years we'd known each other. "Amy, you need to sit down for this," he said, and I could hear party music blasting in the background, laughter that sounded wrong foreign in a space that should have been filled with my parents' gentle presence. "Your parents aren't here. Your sister and her husband have moved in. They're throwing a party." My knees buckled. I was in Tokyo, halfway around the world, closing the biggest deal of my career, and my sister Chloe had just stolen the penthouse I'd bought for our parents. The penthouse I'd worked 80-hour weeks for. The penthouse that was supposed to be their dream retirement home. And somehow, impossibly, my father had signed papers giving her permission to be there. If this story makes your blood boil like mine did, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what happened next is something you won't believe. Drop a comment telling me what you would have done in my situation because, trust me, I'm still processing this myself. But let me back up and tell you how we got here, because the betrayal didn't start that night. It started 6 months earlier at my father's 65th birthday party, though I didn't know it then. I'd spent 3 months planning Dad's 65th birthday party. My parents, Frank and Helen Evans, had worked 2 jobs each to put me through MIT. While my sister Chloe dropped out of college and married Mark, a gambler with no ambition, I graduated top of my class and made a fortune in tech. The party was at Luminaire, a stunning 40th floor restaurant in downtown Chicago. I'd rented the entire place, hired photographers, videographers, and their favorite 80s band. Every relative and old friend was there. Mom gasped when they walked in, tears forming. "Amy, honey, this is too much," she said, but her smile said otherwise. Dad glowed like he hadn't since losing his factory job. Chloe and Mark arrived 45 minutes late. Her dress was a cheap knockoff, his shirt wrinkled. They brought a tiny box wrapped in newspaper comics containing a gas station keychain. "Not all of us are tech moguls," Chloe said with a brittle smile, shooting me a look. "Some of us are just regular people." Mark surveyed the room with calculating eyes, taking in every luxury detail. He whispered to Chloe, and she stared at me with something I now recognize as envy turned to hatred. After dinner, I played a tribute video showing Mom and Dad's journey, their sacrifices for us. Half the room was crying. Then I presented them with a mahogany box containing a crystal key and a deed. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "The Aria Tower penthouse, Amy, that's worth over $4 million. "It's yours," I said, crying. "Fully paid off. You can move in next month." The room erupted in applause. In the chaos, I saw Chloe gripping her champagne glass until her knuckles turned white, her smile carved like a knife. Mark stared at the penthouse photos with pure hunger and resentment. I should have seen the danger then, but I was too happy to notice. The next 8 weeks were some of the happiest of my life. Mom and Dad moved into the penthouse on a sunny Saturday in October, and watching them explore their new home was like watching kids on Christmas morning. Mom kept running from room to room, gasping at the heated bathroom floors, the walk-in closets, the chef's kitchen, with the 6-burner stove she'd always dreamed of. Dad stood on the balcony for 20 minutes straight, just staring out at Lake Michigan, the skyline, the whole city spread out beneath him like a kingdom. "I never thought I'd live somewhere like this," he told me that first day, his voice thick with emotion. "Your mother and I, we've always lived in small spaces. Cramped apartments, tiny houses. This place, Amy, it's bigger than any place we've ever lived combined." They settled in quickly. Mom joined a yoga class that met on the rooftop terrace at dawn. Dad started using the building's state-of-the-art gym and lost 15 pounds in the first month. They made friends with their neighbors, other retirees, who were living their best lives in luxury. I'd video call them every few days, and they looked younger, lighter, like a weight had been lifted off their shoulders that I hadn't even known they were carrying. "You look so happy, Mom," I told her during one call in late November. She was standing in the kitchen making coffee, golden hour light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind her. "I am happy, sweetheart. For the first time in my life, I feel like I can breathe. Like I don't have to worry about money or the roof leaking or the furnace breaking. You gave us a gift we can never repay." "You don't have to repay it," I said. "You've already given me everything that matters." That's when things started to change. Chloe and Mark began showing up at the penthouse every weekend. At first, Mom said they were just visiting, being family, which seemed nice, even if surprising, given that Chloe had barely visited their old house twice a year. But the visits started coming with comments, little barbs that Mom would mention casually on our calls. "Chloe said the penthouse is too high up, that the air is thinner, and it's not good for our age. Mom told me one day, sounding worried. Do you think that's true? No, Mom, that's ridiculous. You're on the 70th floor, not Mount Everest. The air is fine. Well, she seemed really concerned. She said she read an article about it. Another time, Dad mentioned that Mark had commented on their new friends. He said they seemed snobby, said they probably look down on people like us who came from nothing. Do you think we come across as trying too hard, Amy? Dad, no. Those people are your friends because they like you, not because of where you came from. Mark's just being Mark. But even as I said it, I felt uneasy. What were Chloe and Mark playing at? The weekend before Thanksgiving, Mom called me sounding frazzled. Chloe brought the kids over and they made such a mess, honey. Toys everywhere, they spilled juice on the white carpet, drew on the walls with marker. I spent 4 hours cleaning. And Chloe just sat on the couch the whole time saying how exhausting it must be to maintain such a big place. Did she offer to help clean? No, she said she was too tired from the drive. Red flags were starting to pile up, but I was busy with work preparing for the biggest pitch of my career. A partnership with a major Japanese tech firm that could expand our company into the Asian market. It required my full attention, and I told myself Chloe was just being Chloe, jealous and petty, but ultimately harmless. Then came the weekend. Mark supposedly broke the smart home system. Dad called me on a Sunday evening, frustrated. Amy, something's wrong with the lights and the thermostat and the security panel. Everything's on the fritz. Mark was trying to show us how to use some features, and now nothing works right. Did Mark touch the main control panel? I asked, already getting a sinking feeling. Yeah, he said he knew about this stuff from a friend who's an electrician. Mark's friend was probably a bookie, not an electrician. I walked Dad through a system reset over the phone, but the damage was done. Mark had planted the seed. See, Frank, this technology stuff is too complicated for you guys. You need something simpler, more your speed. I heard him say it in the background, his voice dripping with false concern. I should have flown home right then. I should have confronted them. But I had the Tokyo trip coming up in 2 weeks, and I convinced myself I could deal with it when I got back. I'd sit down with Chloe and have a real conversation about boundaries and respect. I'd make sure Mom and Dad knew they belonged in that penthouse as much as anyone. I was so naive. 3 days before I'd left for Tokyo, Mom called me with news that made my stomach drop. Amy, something terrible has happened. Mark got involved with some very bad people. He owes them money and they've been threatening him. He came over today absolutely terrified, said these men know where they live, where the kids go to school. He asked if they could stay here at the penthouse for a while, just until things blow over. Stay there, Mom. No, that sounds like a scam. Mark probably just has gambling debts. I know, but Amy, their family, and Mark was so scared. You should have seen him. He was shaking. What if something really does happen to them? Where would you and Dad go? There was a long pause. We'd stay in the second bedroom. It's just temporary, he said. A few weeks at most. Every instinct I had was screaming at me to say no, to tell them to kick Chloe and Mark out immediately. But I was leaving for Tokyo in 3 days for a 3-week trip, and I knew I couldn't monitor the situation from halfway around the world. I made a decision I'd regret for the rest of my life. Okay, but Mom, please be careful. Don't let them push you around. It's your home. Of course, sweetheart, don't worry about us. You focus on your big meeting. 2 days later, I was on a plane to Tokyo. The first week went well. The meetings were productive. The Japanese executives were impressed with our pitch, and it looked like we were going to close the deal ahead of schedule. I called Mom and Dad every day for the first few days. They said everything was fine. Chloe and Mark were being respectful, keeping to themselves mostly. Then the calls stopped going through. I'd call and it would ring and go to voicemail. I'd text and get no response. I tried calling the Penthouse landline I'd had installed and it was disconnected. On the 5th day of silence, I called Chloe directly. She picked up on the first ring. Hey, Amy, what's up? What's up? I've been trying to reach Mom and Dad for days. Where are they? Oh, didn't they tell you they decided to take a little vacation? Drove out to some cabin in Wisconsin. Real rural area, no cell service. They said they needed some peace and quiet. Something about the way she said it, too smooth, too practiced, made my skin crawl. They didn't mention any trip to me. Well, you know how they are. Spontaneous. They're old school, Amy, don't need to report every little thing to their kids. Her voice had this edge to it, like she was enjoying something I couldn't see. Put them on the phone. I literally just told you they're not here. Chloe, I swear to God if you're lying to me right now. You'll what? You're in Japan, Amy. You're not even on the same continent. Why don't you focus on your precious business deal and let me handle things here? She hung up. I immediately called Ben Carter, my friend from law school. who'd become one of Chicago's top real estate attorneys. I'd introduced him to my parents when they moved in because the building required residents to have a local legal contact. He'd taken a liking to them, especially Mom, who reminded him of his own mother. "Ben, I need you to do me a huge favor. Can you go to the Aria Tower and check on my parents? Something's wrong and I can't get a hold of them." "Of course, I'll head over there right now." I couldn't sleep that night. It was 3 p.m. in Tokyo, middle of the night in Chicago, and I just sat in my hotel room staring at my phone, waiting for Ben to call back. When he finally did 6 hours later, his voice had that quality again. That shaken something is very wrong quality. "Amy, you need to get back here immediately. Your parents aren't at the Penthouse. Your sister and her husband have completely moved in. They've replaced all your parents' furniture with their own stuff. They're hosting some kind of party. There are people I don't recognize drinking expensive wine on your balcony." And when I asked Mark where Frank and Helen were, he smiled at me and said, "They're taking a much-needed break from the stress of this place." It wasn't really their style anyway. I felt like I was falling. The hotel room tilted and I had to sit down on the bed before my legs gave out. "He's lying. They love that place. Where are they really?" "I don't know, Amy, but something is very wrong here. I think you need to get back, and we need to get the police involved." I was on the next flight out. I canceled the final meetings, apologized to the Japanese executives, told my boss there was a family emergency. 14 hours on a plane feeling like I was going to crawl out of my skin. I landed at O'Hare at 6 a.m, Chicago time, didn't even go home, just threw my bags in a taxi and went straight to the Aria Tower. The doorman, Marcus, who knew my parents and had always greeted them warmly, looked uncomfortable when he saw me. "Ms. Evans, I wasn't expecting you." "Are my parents upstairs, Marcus?" He looked down at his shoes. "No, ma'am. Haven't seen Mr. and Mrs. Evans in about 2 weeks. Your sister and her husband are up there, though. They've been having quite a few guests." My hands clenched into fists. I got in the elevator and rode up to the 70th floor, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The hallway was silent, thickly carpeted, the kind of silence that costs money. I reached the penthouse door and pressed the doorbell. Mark answered. He was wearing one of my father's robes, the expensive cashmere one I'd bought Dad as a housewarming gift. His feet were bare and he had a glass of orange juice in one hand, the casual comfort of someone who belonged there. When he saw me, his smile was slow and satisfied, like a cat that had finally caught the canary. "Amy, you're back early." "Where are my parents?" I didn't step inside. I didn't trust myself to step inside. "They're gone." He said it so simply, so casually, like he was commenting on the weather. "Gone where?" "Does it matter?" He leaned against the doorframe. Behind him, I could see the penthouse, and it was wrong, all wrong. The furniture was different, cheap leather couches, and a massive TV where Mom's antique reading chair had been. The walls had different art tacky prints of motorcycles and skulls. The smell was different, beer and takeout instead of Mom's lavender diffuser. "Yes, it fucking matters. That's my parents' home. Where are they?" Chloe appeared behind Mark, wearing silk pajamas that probably cost more than she'd spent on clothes in the last year combined. She looked different. Her hair was freshly dyed, and styled, her nails professionally done, her whole demeanor radiating smugness. She was holding a piece of paper. "Oh, Amy, always so dramatic. Your parents are fine. They're staying at a motel near their old neighborhood. They miss their old friends, their old life." All of this, she gestured around the penthouse with a sweeping motion, was too much for them, too stressful, so they asked us to house sit for them. Here, Daddy even signed papers. She thrust the document at me. I snatched it from her hand and read it, my eyes scanning faster and faster, my breath coming shorter. It was a temporary residency agreement granting Chloe and Mark full use of the penthouse for 1 year. And there at the bottom, in my father's shaky handwriting, was his signature. "This is fake. Dad would never sign this." "It's notarized, Amy. See that stamp? It's all legal. We needed official documentation for the building management proof that we had permission to be here." Daddy understood. He was worried about Mark's situation with those dangerous people. "This place has top-notch security. We needed to be able to come and go without issues. You manipulated him, you scared him, and then you took advantage." Mark stepped forward and I could smell alcohol on his breath, even though it wasn't even 8 a.m. "We didn't manipulate anyone. Your parents made a choice. They realized they didn't fit in here. All those rich people looking down on them, judging them. They were miserable, Amy. You just didn't want to see it because it would mean your big gesture wasn't as perfect as you thought." I looked at both of them, really looked at them, and I saw it clearly for the first time. This had been their plan all along. From the moment I'd given Mom and Dad that key at the birthday party, They'd been plotting how to take it for themselves. Every visit, every comment, every manipulation had been building to this moment. "Get out," I said quietly. "Both of you, get out of my parents' home right now." Chloe laughed, actually laughed. "No, we have a legal right to be here. You want to kick us out, you take us to court. But that'll take months, maybe years. And in the meantime, we'll be living in luxury, while your parents stay in that roach motel off Route 43. Enjoy your flight back to Tokyo," Mark added. "Or wherever rich people like you go. We'll take good care of the place. Oh, and Amy." He smiled. "Thanks for this, really. It's been a dream come true." He shut the door in my face. I stood in that hallway for a full minute, shaking with rage so intense I couldn't move. Then I called Ben. "They're claiming they have legal residency. My dad signed some document." "I need to see that document. Can you get a copy?" Chloe showed it to me, but she wouldn't let me keep it. "Okay, meet me at my office in an hour. We're going to fix this." The next thing I did was something I should have done immediately. I started calling every motel near my parents' old neighborhood. On the 7th call, I hit gold. "Yes, we have a Frank Evans registered here," the clerk said. "Room 114. I was there in 20 minutes. The Starlight Motel was exactly the kind of place Chloe would stick our parents in. Peeling paint-cracked parking lot, a flickering neon sign missing half its letters. I knocked on room 114 with my heart in my throat. Mom opened the door. When she saw me, her face crumpled, and she burst into tears. She looked terrible, thin, and exhausted, dark circles under her eyes. Behind her, I could see Dad lying in bed, his skin gray, his breathing shallow. "Oh, Amy, oh, honey," she pulled me into the room. "I'm so glad you're here. Your father, he had a heart attack. 3 days ago, we had to call an ambulance. He's okay now, the doctor said he's stable, but he needs rest. And I've been so scared, and Chloe said you were too busy with work to be bothered, and I didn't want to interrupt your important trip." I felt something break inside me. "Mom, why are you here? Why aren't you in the penthouse?" She looked down, tears streaming down her face. "We had to leave, Amy. They made us leave. Tell me everything. Right now, tell me exactly what happened." She sat down on the edge of the bed, taking Dad's hand. He was awake watching us, but he looked so weak and defeated, I barely recognized him. Mom took a shaky breath and started talking. "The first few days after they moved in were okay. Tense, but okay. But then they started taking over. Chloe moved all my things out of the master bedroom, said they needed it because they have kids to visit on weekends. Mark started using your father's study as his office, spreading his bedding sheets and poker stuff all over Dad's desk. They were loud at all hours, having friends over, drinking, playing music. We couldn't sleep. Dad's voice came out raspy. I asked them to keep it down, just to be respectful. And Mark, he got right in my face and said, "This is my house now, old man. You're here because we allow it. Don't forget that." We tried to stay out of their way, Mom continued. We kept to the second bedroom, barely came out, but it wasn't enough. Chloe kept making comments about how we were cramping their style, how we didn't know how to live in a place like that. She said we were embarrassing her in front of her new friends. Then one night, Mark sat us down and said he needed us to sign that paper for the building management. He said it was just a formality, something about temporary residency for security purposes. He said the building required it if we were going to have long-term guests. Your father was so confused, Amy, all that legal language. Mark kept rushing him, saying it was urgent, that the building was threatening to kick them out if we didn't have proper documentation. Dad closed his eyes. I thought I was helping. I thought I was keeping my grandson and granddaughter safe from those bad men Mark talked about. I signed it. I didn't read it carefully enough. I trusted my own daughter. 2 days later, they told us we had to leave. Mark said the agreement meant they had full rights to the place now, and we were no longer welcome. When I tried to argue to say that couldn't be right, Chloe said, "Mom, Dad, face it. You don't belong here. You never did. You're just blue-collar people playing dress-up in a rich person's world. You're making fools of yourselves." She said we were an embarrassment to her. Mom's voice broke completely. Mark gave us 30 minutes to pack. It was raining that night, pouring down, and he stood there timing us with his watch. We could only take what we could carry. All our things, all the furniture and photos and clothes Amy bought for us, it's all still there. They kept it or threw it away, I don't know. "We had nowhere to go," Dad whispered. It was 9 o'clock at night, and we were standing on the street in the rain with 2 suitcases. So we came here. I used my credit card for a week's stay. And then 2 days later, I was lying in bed and my chest started hurting. I couldn't breathe. The stress, the betrayal, it all just hit me at once. Helen called 911 and they took me to County General. Spent 2 days there. Insurance covered most of it, but not all. The worst part, Mom said, gripping my hand so tight it hurt, was when we tried calling Chloe from the hospital to tell her what happened to ask for help with the medical bills. She wouldn't answer. We left messages. Nothing. Finally, she texted back and said, "You made your choices. Live with them." I sat there listening to this and I felt something I'd never felt before. A cold, calculating rage. Not the hot anger that makes you yell and scream, but the kind of fury that makes you dangerously calm. The kind that plans. "Pack your things," I told them. "We're leaving. I'm taking you to my apartment. Then I'm going to destroy them." "Amy, no," Dad said weakly. "She's your sister. Family is family. She stopped being my sister the moment she did this to you. She stopped being family when she chose greed over love. This isn't about reconciliation anymore, Dad. This is about justice." I got them settled in my penthouse apartment in the West Loop, a place I barely spent time in because I was always working. I set Dad up in the master bedroom, called a private cardiologist to come do a house call, hired a nurse to check on him twice daily. Mom tried to protest about the expense, but I cut her off. "Mom, I have more money than I'll ever spend. Let me take care of you." That's what this was all supposed to be about in the first place. Once they were safe and comfortable, I met with Ben at his office. He'd done some digging on the document. "It's real," he said grimly. "The notarization is legitimate. But here's the thing, Amy. That document gives them residency rights, but it doesn't give them ownership. You still own that penthouse, which means you control the finances tied to it." "What do you mean?" "All those luxury services, the high-speed internet, the cable package, the weekly maid service, the gym and pool access. Those are all separate charges billed to the owner. That's you. You've been paying about $6,000 a month in amenity fees for that unit. Fees that Chloe and Mark are now enjoying." I felt a slow smile spread across my face. What happens if I cancel those services? They'd still have basic access to the unit, but their lifestyle would take a pretty significant hit. "Do it. Cancel everything, today." "You got it. But Amy, there's something else." I did some digging on Mark. He's been meeting with mortgage brokers. I think he's trying to use that residency document to take out a loan against the property. Can he do that? No, he'd need your signature as the owner, and he'd need to prove ownership, which he can't. But if he tries, that's fraud. That's a crime. We need to watch him carefully, and the moment he makes a move, we pounce. Get me a private investigator. I want to know every single thing they're doing in that penthouse. Over the next 2 weeks, I watched my plan unfold with grim satisfaction. The internet was cut first, then the cable. The maid service stopped showing up. The gym canceled their access cards. I got detailed reports from the PI. Chloe had been bragging to all her friends about her new penthouse lifestyle, posting photos on social media, inviting people over for parties. Now she was panicking, calling the building management, screaming about the services being cut, being told that the owner had requested the cancellations, and there was nothing they could do. The PI caught something else too. Mark had indeed met with a mortgage broker, and he'd presented the residency document claiming it was a transfer of ownership. He'd tried to take out a $500,000 loan using the penthouse as collateral. The broker had smelled something fishy and contacted the title company, who confirmed I was still the owner, and no such transfer had occurred. The broker reported Mark to the police. That was my opening. Ben filed for an emergency eviction, citing the fraudulent loan attempt and the fact that the residency agreement had been obtained under false pretenses, specifically through elder manipulation. We attached statements from Mom and Dad detailing how they'd been pressured and misled. We attached the police report about Mark's attempted fraud. We attached medical records from Dad's heart attack with a doctor's note stating it was likely stress-induced. Then Ben did something brilliant. He reached out to Chloe's loudest, most gossipy friend, a woman named Patricia, who was infamous for knowing everyone's business. Ben casually mentioned in a conversation with her at a charity event that Chloe and Mark had manipulated and abused elderly parents to steal their home, and that Mark was facing potential fraud charges. He knew Patricia couldn't keep her mouth shut to save her life. Within 48 hours, the story had spread through Chloe's entire social circle. The same friends she'd been bragging to, showing off to, they all turned on her. Her phone blew up with messages, but not the kind she wanted. People calling her disgusting, cruel, asking how she could do that to her own parents. Several people left scathing comments on her social media posts about the penthouse. Funny how you forgot to mention you stole this from your elderly parents. Elder abuse isn't a good look, Chloe. Hope it was worth destroying your family. The day we served them with the eviction notice, I made sure to be there. Ben and I showed up with 2 police officers and a process server. It was 10 in the morning on a Thursday. Mark answered the door in his underwear, clearly still drunk from whatever party they'd had the night before. His face went white when he saw the cops. "What's this about?" One of the officers stepped forward. "Mark Harrison, you're under arrest for attempted fraud and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent." They pulled out handcuffs. "Wait, what? No, there's been a mistake." But they were already cuffing him, reading him his Miranda rights. Chloe came running out of the bedroom in a bathrobe, her face without makeup, looking panicked and small, and nothing like the smug woman who'd slammed the door in my face. "Amy, what's happening? Tell them this is a mistake." I looked at her for a long moment. This was my sister. We'd shared a bedroom growing up. She'd taught me how to ride a bike, helped me study for my SATs, been my maid of honor at my college boyfriend's near wedding before I called it off. But looking at her now, I felt nothing but contempt. "Mark tried to take out a fraudulent loan against property he doesn't own. That's a felony. You both manipulated and emotionally abused our parents, triggering Dad's heart attack. You stole their home through deception, and you're both about to lose everything." Ben handed Chloe the eviction notice. "You have 72 hours to vacate the premises. That's more generous than you were to Frank and Helen, who you gave 30 minutes in the pouring rain." Chloe's hands were shaking as she took the papers. "You can't do this. We have rights. We have that agreement." "An agreement obtained through elder manipulation and fraud," Ben said calmly. "It's void, and even if it weren't, Amy owns this property. She controls access to it. You have no legal leg to stand on." The police led Mark out in handcuffs. As they passed me, he spat. "This is all your fault. If you'd just been fair, none of this would have happened. But no, you had to be the golden child showing off how successful you are." I stepped closer to him, and my voice came out ice cold. "I bought my parents a home with money I earned. You tried to steal it. Those aren't the same thing, Mark, and you're going to prison because you couldn't tell the difference." They took him away. Chloe stood in the doorway of the penthouse, tears streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy. She looked at me with something like desperation. "Amy, please, I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I was jealous and stupid, and I let Mark convince me this was okay. But we're sisters. We're blood. You can't destroy me over this." "I'm not destroying you, Chloe. You destroyed yourself. You had a choice at every step. When Mark came up with this plan, you could have said no. When you were pressuring Mom and Dad to sign that paper, you could have stopped. When you threw them out in the rain, you could have shown mercy. When Dad had a heart attack and called you from the hospital, you could have answered, but you didn't. You chose greed over family every single time." "I was just trying to give my kids a better life," she sobbed. "Just like Mom and Dad tried to give us a better life. Why is it okay when you do it, but not when I do?" "Because I didn't hurt anyone to do it, Chloe. I worked for it. I earned it. I didn't manipulate elderly people. I didn't commit fraud. I didn't emotionally abuse anyone. You want a better life? Get a job. Work for it. But you don't get to steal from our parents and then play victim." I turned and walked away. Behind me, I could hear her sobbing, begging me to wait, to talk, to work this out. I didn't look back. The next 72 hours were chaos for Chloe. The eviction company I hired showed up with the moving crew and boxes. Everything of hers and Mark's was packed up and moved to a storage unit that I paid for 1 month's rent, not because I cared about them, but because I didn't want Mom and Dad's things damaged in the process. Every piece of furniture they'd brought and every tacky decoration, every trace of their occupation was removed. I had professional cleaners come in and deep clean the entire penthouse. I had the locks changed. I had the smart home system completely reset and upgraded with additional security features. I went through every room and found the things that belonged to my parents, carefully packed away or shoved in closets, and I restored them. Meanwhile, Mark was sitting in county jail, bail set at $50,000 that neither he nor Chloe could afford. The charges were serious: attempted fraud, identity theft, and the DA was considering adding elder abuse charges based on the statements from Mom and Dad. Ben filed a civil suit against both Chloe and Mark, seeking damages for emotional distress, Dad's medical bills, the cost of their motel stay, and punitive damages for their actions. The amount we were asking for was $300,000. I knew they'd never be able to pay it. That wasn't the point. The point was to make sure this followed them for the rest of their lives. 3 weeks later, Mark took a plea deal. 2 years in prison with possibility of parole after 18 months restitution to be determined by the civil case, and a permanent mark on his criminal record. Chloe avoided criminal charges because she technically hadn't signed any of the fraudulent documents, but the civil suit against her was proceeding. Her lawyer contacted Ben to try to negotiate a settlement. They offered $10,000, all they had in their savings. Ben called me for approval. "Take it," I said. But I want something else too. I want a written apology from Chloe to Mom and Dad, read aloud in a deposition that will be part of the legal record. And I want her to admit on record exactly what she did and why. That's unusual, but I can make it happen. 2 weeks later, I sat in Ben's conference room with Mom and Dad. Across from us sat Chloe with her lawyer, looking like she'd aged 10 years. The court reporter set up her machine, and Ben began the deposition. Ms. Harrison, please state for the record what occurred between September and November of this year regarding your parents Frank and Helen Evans and the property located at the Aria Tower. Chloe's voice was barely a whisper. She had to be told twice to speak up. I manipulated my parents into signing a document that gave my husband and me residency rights to their penthouse. We told them it was for security purposes, but we knew it was legally binding. We then forced them to leave the property with minimal belongings during inclement weather. This caused my father severe emotional distress that contributed to a cardiac event. And why did you do this? She looked up and her eyes met mine. There was anger there still, but also something broken. Because I was jealous of my sister. She's always been the successful one, the smart one, the one our parents were proud of. She bought them this incredible gift and I couldn't stand it. I wanted what she had. I wanted people to think I was successful too, and I convinced myself that I deserved it more because I had kids, because my life was harder. But I was wrong. I hurt the people who loved me most because I couldn't stand watching someone else succeed. Please read your statement to your parents. Chloe pulled out a piece of paper with shaking hands. Mom, Dad, I'm sorry. I know those words don't fix anything. I know they don't undo the pain I caused you or the fear you felt or Dad's heart attack. I was cruel and selfish, and I chose money over family. I chose my own bitterness over your well-being. You gave me everything growing up, and I repaid you by betraying you in the worst way possible. I understand if you never forgive me. I don't know if I'd forgive me, but I need you to know that I'm sorry, and that I know what I did was unforgivable. Mom was crying. Dad was staring at the table, his jaw clenched. When Chloe finished, there was silence in the room. Finally, Dad spoke. Are you sorry you did it, or are you sorry you got caught? Chloe flinched. Both, she said quietly. I'm sorry I did it because it was wrong, but I'm also sorry I got caught because now I have to face consequences. I can't lie about that. I wish I could say I'm a better person than I am, but I'm not. At least she was honest. It was the first honest thing I'd heard from her in months. The settlement was finalized. Chloe paid the $10,000, signed a promissory note for the remaining amount to be paid over 20 years, and agreed to a no-contact order with Mom and Dad for a minimum of 2 years, unless they initiated contact first. With Mark in prison and Chloe's life in ruins, I turned my attention to what really mattered, making things right for Mom and Dad. I sat them down one evening in my apartment. Dad was recovering well, his color back getting stronger every day. Mom had stopped looking over her shoulder, stopped flinching at loud noises. I'm going to ask you both something, and I want you to be completely honest with me. Do you want to go back to the Aria Tower penthouse? They looked at each other, having one of those silent married people conversations. Finally, Mom spoke. Honey, that place is beautiful, and we were so happy there at first. But now when I think about it, all I remember is the fear, the betrayal. It's been poison for us. Dad nodded. I keep thinking about standing in the rain with our suitcases, feeling like we didn't belong anywhere. That penthouse doesn't feel like home anymore. It feels like a crime scene. Okay, I said. Then we're selling it, and we're going to find you a real home. A place that's yours, that makes you feel safe and happy. No luxury towers, no status symbols. Just a place where you can be comfortable and at peace. Amy, you don't have to do that, Mom protested. You've already done so much. Mom, I bought you that penthouse because I thought expensive meant better. I thought height and luxury and views meant success and happiness. But I was wrong. I should have asked you what you wanted instead of assuming I knew. So I'm asking now. If you could live anywhere, where would it be? They thought about it for a few days. Then Mom called me with an idea. You know what we've always talked about? Having a little house with a garden, somewhere quiet where we could grow tomatoes and have a porch to sit on in the evenings. Maybe near a park where we could walk. Nothing fancy, just cozy. I started looking immediately. I found a beautiful craftsman-style house in Oak Park, a quiet suburb with tree-lined streets and a real neighborhood feel. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a huge backyard with mature trees and enough sun for a proper garden. A front porch with a swing, a finished basement, walking distance to a park, and a library. It cost less than half what the penthouse had cost, which told me everything I needed to know about how badly I'd missed the mark the first time. I bought it in cash, hired contractors to make it more accessible for their age. Installing grab bars in the bathrooms, a walk-in shower, wider doorways, better lighting. I had a garden bed built with raised sides so Dad wouldn't have to bend as much. I furnished it simply but comfortably, asking them about every single choice instead of deciding for them. The day they moved in, I watched from the porch as Dad walked around the backyard, touching the fence, examining the soil, already planning his garden. Mom was in the kitchen, running her hands over the butcher block counters, opening cabinets, smiling at the window, over the sink that looked out at a bird feeder. "This is perfect," she said, pulling me into a hug. "This is exactly what we needed." We had dinner that night, sitting on the porch, just the three of us watching the sun set through the trees. Dad was animated in a way I hadn't seen since before all of this started, talking about what vegetables he wanted to plant, what trees he might add, how he wanted to build a little shed for tools. "You know what the difference is," he said, looking out at the quiet street. "The penthouse was impressive. This is home. The penthouse was about showing the world we'd made it. This is about actually living." "I'm sorry I didn't understand that before," I said. "Don't be sorry," Mom said, squeezing my hand. "You gave us an incredible gift both times. The first time you gave us luxury. This time you gave us peace. Both came from love. But one of them nearly destroyed you." "No," Dad said firmly. "Chloe nearly destroyed us, not the penthouse, not you. Your sister's choices did that. You can't take responsibility for her actions. But I did feel responsible, at least partially. If I hadn't made such a big show of the penthouse, if I hadn't created such an obvious symbol of wealth and success, maybe Chloe wouldn't have been driven to such desperate measures. Maybe the gap between us wouldn't have felt so insurmountable to her." I mentioned this to my therapist, Dr. Chen, who I'd started seeing after all of this happened. The trauma had affected me more than I'd wanted to admit. "Amy, your sister didn't act out because you were successful. She acted out because she couldn't handle her own feelings about your success. That's not your fault. You didn't owe it to her to make yourself smaller so she could feel bigger. But family is supposed to support each other. Maybe I should have helped her more, given her more opportunities." "Did she ever ask for help?" I thought about it. No, she only ever made snide comments about how easy I had it, how lucky I was. Exactly, she didn't want help. She wanted what you had without doing the work to get it. There's a difference between helping someone and enabling someone's sense of entitlement. You offered to help her go back to school multiple times over the years. You offered to connect her with job opportunities. She turned you down every time because she didn't want to earn things. She wanted them handed to her. That conversation helped me let go of some of the guilt. Not all of it, maybe not even most of it, but enough to move forward. 6 months after Mark went to prison, I got a letter from him. It was forwarded through Ben because I'd made it clear I wanted no direct contact. The letter was 3 pages long, mostly self-pitying, but there was one paragraph that stuck with me. "I know you think I'm a monster. Maybe I am. But you have to understand what it's like being the failure in a family of success. Your dad worked in a factory, but he was respected. Your mom was a waitress, but people loved her. You're a tech genius. And me, I'm the guy who never finished anything, never made anything of myself. Chloe's the daughter who couldn't live up to you. We were already nothing before we did this. We just proved it." I read it 3 times, trying to find sympathy in myself. Trying to understand. And I did understand intellectually. I understood that envy and inadequacy can poison a person from the inside out. But understanding didn't mean excusing. Plenty of people feel inadequate and don't commit elder abuse. Plenty of people struggle with jealousy and don't destroy their families. I wrote back one sentence. "Feeling inadequate didn't make you betray my parents. Choosing to act on those feelings did." I never heard from him again. A year after everything happened, on what would have been Dad's 67th birthday, we had a small party at the Oak Park house. Just Mom, Dad, me, Ben, who had become a real friend through all of this, and a few of my parents' neighbors, who they'd gotten close to. We were in the backyard, sitting around a fire pit, and Dad was showing off his garden, which was thriving. Tomatoes, peppers, zucchini, herbs, even a small strawberry patch. He'd built the shed himself, spent weeks working on it, and he was prouder of that shed than he'd ever been of the penthouse. "Make a wish, Dad," I said, lighting the candles on his cake. He closed his eyes, thought for a moment, and blew them out. When I asked him what he wished for, he smiled. "I wished that this moment right here could last forever. My family together, my garden growing, sitting in my own backyard, in my own house. This is all I've ever wanted." Later, after everyone had gone home and I was helping Mom clean up, she pulled me aside. I need to tell you something, and I don't want you to take it the wrong way. Okay, I forgive Chloe. I nearly dropped the plate I was holding. Mom, how can you possibly forgive her after what she did? Because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. She's my daughter, she's sick with jealousy and entitlement, and she needs help that I can't give her. But I can forgive her, not for her sake, for mine. So I don't have to carry this anger around for the rest of my life. Have you talked to her? No, and I won't, not until she gets real help, if ever. Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting or letting her back into our lives. It just means I'm not going to let what she did poison the rest of my days. I have too much good in my life now to waste it on bitterness. I thought about that a lot in the following weeks. I wasn't ready to forgive Chloe. Maybe I never would be, but I could appreciate what Mom was saying about not letting it consume me. I threw myself into work, into therapy, into making sure Mom and Dad had everything they needed. I started a foundation to help elderly people who'd been victims of financial abuse by family members. Something I'd learned was devastatingly common. I used my platform as a successful tech entrepreneur to raise awareness about elder abuse, telling a version of my family's story without names in interviews and at conferences. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people reached out to share their own stories of being betrayed by family members, of having their generosity weaponized against them, of the unique pain that comes from being hurt by people who are supposed to love you most. I realized that what happened to us wasn't unique. It was part of a larger pattern of entitlement and greed that tears families apart every day. And while I couldn't fix all of those situations, I could use my resources and my voice to shine a light on the problem. 2 years after Mark went to prison, he was released on parole. I got a notification from the Victim Services Office. 3 months after his release, I heard through mutual acquaintances that he and Chloe had divorced. She'd apparently met someone new, was trying to rebuild her life. I felt nothing hearing that news. Not satisfaction, not anger, not even curiosity. She'd become a stranger to me. I saw her once by accident about 3 years after everything happened. I was having lunch at a cafe in Evanston, and she walked in with 2 kids I assumed were hers, though they'd grown so much I barely recognized them. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. For a few seconds, we just stared at each other. She looked older, tired, but maybe a little more real than she had been. Less polished, less performed. She raised her hand in a small, uncertain wave. I nodded back. We didn't approach each other, we didn't speak. But in that moment, I saw something in her face that might have been genuine remorse, or maybe just the weight of consequences, and I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. She was my sister once. She wasn't anymore. And that was okay. Some relationships don't survive their betrayals, and that's not always a tragedy. Sometimes it's just reality. Now, 5 years later, Mom and Dad are still in that Oak Park house. Dad's garden is famous in the neighborhood. Mom volunteers at the local library. They take walks in the park every evening, holding hands like teenagers. Dad's heart is strong. Mom's smile is genuine. They've built a real community, real friendships, a real life. I visit every Sunday for dinner. We sit on that porch and talk about everything and nothing. Dad tells me about the new tomato variety he's trying. Mom shows me the quilt she's making. We laugh about sitcoms we're watching and debate about politics and make plans for holidays. And sometimes, though, not often anymore. One of them will mention something from before, from the Penthouse days, or even earlier, and we'll share a look that acknowledges the journey we've been on together, the pain we've survived, the lessons we've learned about what really matters. I learned that love isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. It's about presence, attention, respect. It's about asking people what they need instead of assuming you know. It's about creating safety, not just security. I learned that family isn't determined by blood. It's determined by actions. The people who show up, who choose you, who protect you, those are your family. DNA is just DNA. I learned that some people will never be happy for your success, and you can't fix that. You can't make yourself smaller to make them feel bigger. All you can do is live your life with integrity and let them deal with their own demons. Most importantly, I learned that home isn't a place. It's not a penthouse in the sky or a craftsman house in the suburbs. It's the people you love, the safety you feel, the peace you've earned. And once you understand that no one can take it away from you, the penthouse at the Aria Tower sold for $4.2 million. I donated half to the Elder Abuse Foundation I'd started. The rest went into a trust for Mom and Dad's care as they age. and for any medical expenses or needs they might have. I never want them to worry about money again. I never want them to feel vulnerable again. And as for me, I'm okay, more than okay. I'm at peace with how things turned out. I protected the people I love. I got justice for a terrible wrong. I learned what really matters. Could I have handled things differently from the beginning? Absolutely. Should I have paid more attention to Chloe's jealousy before it turned into something monstrous? Probably. But I can't change the past. I can only learn from it and do better going forward. So here's what I want you to take away from this story. If someone in your life is treating you like a bank account instead of a human being, if they're manipulating you or your loved ones, if they're choosing greed over relationship, you have the right to walk away. You have the right to protect yourself and the people you love. Blood doesn't give anyone the right to abuse you. And if you're the one feeling jealous of a family member's success, hear this. Your feelings are valid, but your actions are your choice. Get therapy, work on yourself, build your own life instead of trying to steal someone else's. There's no shortcut to genuine happiness, and anything you take through manipulation will poison you from the inside out. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever dealt with a toxic family member who tried to take advantage of you? How did you handle it? Drop your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, if you've been through something similar, or you know someone who has hit that like button and subscribe, so you don't miss future stories. Your support means everything, and it helps me keep sharing these experiences that too many people suffer through in silence. Remember, you deserve respect. You deserve boundaries. You deserve a family that builds you up instead of tearing you down. And if you don't have that, you have the right to create it for yourself. Thanks for listening to my story. Take care of yourselves out there, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting your peace.